Okay, well, thanks guys for joining us on this discussion. We're looking at the kind of impact that AI has had on pricing and scoping, and the way that agencies and creative agencies in particular price their business with the onset of AI as a tool. So we'll come on to that in a minute, but I think the best place to start is if you can both introduce yourselves.
I'm Tracy Shercliffe. I'm the CEO and founder of Scope Better, and we are a platform that helps agencies and professional services businesses to price more consistently and more robustly, and hopefully for more profits ongoing.
I'm Derek Ciccone. I've been a CFO, COO across almost every holding company at this point, and I was Chief Commercial Officer at Wunderman Thompson EMEA when that still existed, and been all over. I worked in the UK, in the US now, but really excited to have a chat.
Great. Okay, thank you. Just a quick introduction from me. I'm the CEO of Talent Edge, which is a recruitment business that focuses a lot on the marketing services sector, but also media and technology. And I also part of the same group really is a business called Troy. That's a consultancy. That's a subscription model for recruitment, and mainly in the technology sector. Great. So thanks for the introductions. So maybe start with Derek. How have things changed in terms of AI impacting pricing conversations for agencies?
Yeah, I think it's really interesting, because I think, when Tracy and I first spoke about this, it was like, agencies need to jump in. I'm like, well, procurement really needs to jump in. And I think everyone is trying to get to the answer, and no one, I think, has the right model yet. And as agencies have seen their costs ever increase, we've gone away from like a simple multiplier on direct labor, reviewing your overhead and what's here. All of those things have expanded so much for agencies that they can't absorb all the costs that sit within overhead anymore. So what we have are, like what agencies are doing, what holding companies are doing, and you can see it in their, results and the investments they're making in technology. We're building infrastructure, we're building orchestration layers that are helping us do work faster. And yet the models still aren't changing, and agencies need to learn how to get there, how to explain that better, that how do we bring to life the orchestration, the models that we have, so that we're focused on the output, we're focused on the outcome, we're focused on the value that's there. And I think we got to get away from the, like, what are the inputs that are coming into this model? Give me the hours and give me the people that are on my account. It's less about that, because those are just driving us to make sure that my output to you is my hours and my people. But that's not what you're asking me for. You're asking me for something that actually delivers for your client, for my clients. So I think right now we're starting to have more of those conversations that I've ever seen, at least within the advertising groups. But I think it's still a majority of our work is still done, or is majority of the organization's work is still done via, older models. And a lot of that is due to longer contracts and just kind of longer cycles to cycle these things out of the 3-year contract that we may be in.
Yeah. Okay. And Tracy, you're advising businesses that I guess are going through this challenging time at the moment. So how are you advising them with regards to this? Because I'm assuming a lot were billable hours based.
Well, we've been talking about profitability pricing models, and certainly I have been, on the drum for over 10 years. I'm gonna mirror at the back of kind of what Derek said. We're in 2026, and what's happening is things are moving at even faster rate. And we're talking specifically around pricing models, but what's happened is the entire agency framework of how work is done is changing. So AI tools are, number one, fundamentally speeding things up, and still 70% of businesses in the agency space are based on time and materials. So if we're speeding up the work that's being done, the expectations of clients is real, and that they're expecting the billable hours to come down. But the reality of what that actually means is that the tools that agencies are starting to use are needing to be more clever. The teams are having to have more knowledge about new tools and new models, and they're actually not just using one tool. They could be using 3, 5, 10 different AI tools at different levels. So the traditional models of pricing just don't wash anymore. So we talk to all of our clients about moving from time and materials, which I'll repeat again, it never ceases to amaze me with FTEs and various things. Still over 70% of businesses rely on that based on their the AOR relationships they have with clients, they now need to start pitching and moving to kind of a productized approach where they will bundle in the time and hours that they're working with their teams into packaged products. And the real benefit of this starts to come out that instead of every time you come into a client project, you have to start from scratch. You start to get revenue scalability because you have a set of products that you can use. The teams know how to deliver those. You can then improve those. This then, by its very nature, starts to optimize your profit margins. Once again, if you're at a time and materials model, Derek, you know this really well, clients buy into teams and, of course, expensive people. That means that there's kind of a cap on resources and what we call superstars. But if you're producing products and you've got AI tools that are wrapping around what you're delivering, those scalable superstars then become the AI products that you're now creating and producing for your clients. And this will, of course, reduce the overhead and operational expenses. You're cutting overheads, you're then bringing in different tools. I mean, the model needs a complete, I think, reshape around how you're going to productize your approach. Derek, I know you'll concur with me. It's just around how the businesses can catch up. And I think the real kind of tech is that if agencies do this successfully, their valuations will increase because they're now product businesses. They're not service-based models, which is, the multiples for even for sale is currently completely changes. But I know Derek's going to take it away back.
No, look, no, I think that it really is the change in the framework is huge, right? Like it used to be really simple. Our business was really easy, right? Like we had direct labor, we had our people's cost, and if a client wanted the better talent, we paid people more and brought them in, and the overhead was the overhead. The office was the office, and you know what? We get breakfast, we have lunches, we have those things, but like it all sat within that overhead number that we had. All of that's pivoted. It really is like there are, as you brought up, there's multiple tools. I mean, we're talking about bespoke solutions. We're talking with AI companies around every little bespoke solution, how that plugs into the overall ecosystems that exist within these holdcos. Now, those are going to be Lego bricked in and out as better tech and better solutions come available, but only if we can afford to do that. And what that
and you need to be charging for those in your model, right? Absolutely, 100%.
No. And that's the hardest thing, because right now what you're seeing, and I think agencies is always really good at just helping their clients. And if the client says, like we need this to come down, tell us what your billable hours are, tell me what those are. And those client service people are just like, you know what, we are using less people. And you know what, it should be cheaper. So they bring both of those things down without actually seeing and without actually understanding that in order to bring to life any of these ecosystems, it takes a ton of compute data, it takes a ton of partnerships, then there's just the orchestration, the overall tech that you're building. And that isn't going to stop, it's only accelerating. So while compute costs may come down, the acceleration of how these tools will come together and what that orchestration is going to be huge. And just because clients, and this one, I've been thinking about the other day, was only because somebody brought it up, was like, oh, we have ChatGPT. Why would I have to pay for that? I was like, whoa. I was like, this is like, going to, a Michelin star restaurant and buying the cookbook instead of eating the dinner. Like, just because you have the ingredients doesn't mean you're going to make $1,000 dinner. And that's what we need to bring to life. And agencies are really doing I think a poor job. Just some agencies do a great job of it, making sure that that story comes to life around how these products are helping your outcomes and helping you create all this value over here, and pricing for it in there, because the cost isn't coming down as dramatically as everyone sees. Publicists and WPP and Omnicom are not posting 20 to 30% margins right now, right? Like, which would be with the amount of people we've let go, right? It's just not the case, right? Every group is investing a ton to outdo each other. So sorry.
It's all really interesting stuff. So it sounds like there's an education piece internally in terms of, pricing, the various tools that you've got, but also how you gel those together, and the time spent doing that and the time spent training people and creating experts, you need to value those. And Tracy, I think you said 70% is still on time and materials. What's stopping that education internally to say, this is the way we now need to pitch? And I guess the second part of that is, are the clients buying that when where you are able to successfully do that, or are they pushing back saying, come on, price must be going down because everything's a lot cheaper, you've got less people, that's your main overhead, etc., etc.
That is actually starting to happen. I'm actually even going to step back further, Simon. What's been happening, I think, for many years is the whole kind of language that's used around pricing and how we kind of position services. Because, the language you talk about cost versus price, that, cost is the thing that we talk with about clients, but actually it should be price. We talk about estimates when we should be talking about talent. We talk about hours when we should be talking about results. So when you start to productize the approach that you're working through, you stop talking about who's doing it and the hours that they're doing. You start talking about the results and what you're delivering. And this is a fundamental shift of a way of thinking. And just like AI is changing the way that we're expected to work faster, to have multiple different tools that can help different areas of the business speed up, it's the same thing. Billable time now becomes to outcome, labor as results, utilization as value. These kind of key things, we need to change the whole thinking of an industry from kind of the inside out. And I think it needs to come down to language. It needs to come down to positioning. People find it really easy, well, relatively, to start to position things differently at pitch. But what do you do with your everyday clients, those agencies of record that are currently paying for everybody? So it's an education and it's a journey. And you need to start by educating them of the number of tools that you're using and how you're doing that, and then positioning these products. I mean, David Jones and his team have done it very well, I think, in the last couple of years. And now they're in kind of a very good spot, and others are catching up. I mean, I'd love to hear Derek's input, but for me, I think there's a whole kind of how we talk about it and then how we sell that not only to our clients but internally. And I think the biggest challenge is the internal challenge.
Is there that kind of internal communication piece so that people understand it rather than just pitch, but you start living and breathing and everyone realizes that it isn't just about people delivering on account and their time and materials? Do agencies have the right structure to educate, or does that sit with finance? You're obviously in finance, this is why I'm coming to you. Is there another area that needs to take this on board to support finance in this? What's happening with that?
I mean, Tracy, maybe the 4As will let us describe an industry standard of what we should use, because I think that is really what is the issue, right? Like every client looks at it differently, every procurement team looks at it differently, and every agency, like I said before, is a service business. So however they talk is how our teams talk to us, right? And I'm going to say us as finance and us as commercial teams and operational teams. As we try to bring these things to life, we have to mirror the organization of the client, and that's truly what a service business was. As we become more of a product business, right, you can start to make that shift, right? As we turn the KPIs, and Tracy, maybe it may be something around this. I was just writing while I was trying to think this out before, where it was like the KPIs are hours and people. So hours times rate equals what we did. That's not what we did. So I think there needs to be a mirror year. So if we're talking about transitioning a team to something a little more output based, we have to start tracking the output in the current year, in the prior 2 years. And then what does that transition look like over 2 years to get us there? Because I think that becomes the point to the client. It's like, last year you paid me $10 million to do 10,000 widgets. This year, what if I gave you 12,000 widgets? Or what if I gave you 10,000 widgets each half? Procurement says yes to that immediately, but they need a point that proves that we agreed to this. So every time, my suggestion would be, and this has worked, is when you deliver your hours, deliver what widgets you delivered at that point, whatever it may be, whether it's campaigns, whether it's something, right? But it has to be tied to something else, and it can't just be the accounting team doing a reconciliation of hours times rate and sending that over the fence to a procurement team. It needs to be the business teams on the ground really understanding what's actually happening here, and then having that real conversation with the clients, because it's not just no longer is it about getting on with great work. I think a friend of mine, Owen, he'd said the other day, is like every CMO over 40 has only known a measurable world, meaning they've only been promoted because their KPIs have done better and these things have happened. So as that world happens, we have to show them how this is going to move that KPI. And I don't think we do a good job with that. Let's take them out to lunch. Let's do this. Let's focus on the work. It's got to be creative. Yes, that's all has to be true. And you got to do this other shit. Sorry.
Well, I think the biggest thing is people are working out how. So I think that's kind of the question that Simon started with. And I mean, my humble view is that data comes out of finance. So I think they're certainly a person that can help lead the change and drive the change. You know, Tim Williams talks about a value council, that you get a group of people within the organization. They still do their day jobs, but they're actually working out what is the value, what are the products that you create as a business. You then test those on some of your pitch clients. You then come back to kind of refine those, make those better and better. You're stopping that cost-based language that we kind of, you know, is ingrained in the industry at the moment. You start to talk about the value-based language, which you talk about results, outcomes, deliverables, metrics, you know, prices, not costs, not billable time, not so that's kind of that transition. But I think it all starts with a group inside the business that starts that change, and you need data and knowledge to start to propagate that out. There's that wonderful saying, isn't it? If you do what you've always done, you're going to get what you've always got. Yeah. And I think, Derek, you started that the industry's on fire at the moment.
I think as everyone moves to a WPP versus a publicist versus, you know, Omnicom, what is that wrapper that sits in the middle that holds all these things together? Is it the data that's going to win there? Is it the orchestration? Is it the outputs? Like, it's because everyone's betting in different areas.
Well, it's all around, also about speed. So if you're productizing elements to ensure that you're getting there fast, then those have to be products that you're selling. And then you talk around, you know, what is it that, you know, we're actually delivering? It's the outcome, it's the solution that people are effectively wanting.
I think what's really interesting, I think when we, you know, like first spoke, it was, you know, like agencies need to do more. And I think agencies would be there. I think it's hard to, like, no one knows how to start that conversation with procure. I think everyone starts where they are today. And where they are today is, as Tracy said, is 70%, right? Like, so if most of us are starting there, how much can we actually pivot? And no one's willing to make that leap. These are big levels of spend. We talk about the, you know, size of the clients and who's here and, you know, like the length of those contracts. So I get it, but I will be guilty of probably talking about hours right after this call.
One of the things that you hear a lot about, I don't know, whether it's at pitch stage or whether it's at through delivery or on a contract, is transparency. And I guess if you're talking about times and materials, maybe you feel confident that I can be transparent about the number of hours, etc. When you come to putting lots of different tools together and somehow valuing that as a product, because you don't just want to add up the cost of the tools, because you actually need experts to gel those together and some thought and time spent in that. How do you maintain that, or do you need to maintain that transparency with clients when it's a bit different valuing a product to valuing time?
Absolutely.
I can quote Tracy. Wait, can I quote you first? It's in a deck that I wrote. It's like, procurement leaders say transparency is non-negotiable. Agency should show what tech costs and clients should expect to pay for it. And that puts the onus on both sides. And I do believe you know, if agencies right now showed what the tech truly costs, it would be a non-starter.
Cost of, and it's not being, you know, it's not being amortized as a cost of business, which it is. I mean, that's no other industry would do it like that.
Well, so they just take all the costs up front and then it's paid for, so now we can charge less. Is that the kind of?
I mean that rolls into, you know, what is it that I do? It's like I run a business that has a software platform, and everybody understands, because they've been educated over several years, of software as a service, so that you're paying for that service. So, you know, why is it that agencies are not selling AI as a service? So as a fee, as an ongoing continuous fee. I mean, we're looking at pricing models. So yes, one way is to productize it. Another way is to have an AI fee for rapid prototyping and delivery of creative, rapid development and prototyping of strategy. I mean, this is around how do you speed up what it is that you deliver as a business. And you can, I mean, the whole idea of AI is that you can have more ideas to test so that you get closer and closer to more successful models.
I like that, because it's like, it really is. There's an operating system that needs to be resourced the same way people have been resourced in the past, right? And that is not it's no longer a person is sitting at a desk and doing work. They're working collaboratively within environments that are built bespoke for clients and to do client work. And those bespoke instances have been built by each one of these holdcos. So if we think about it that way, it really is the operating system. It is the the FiOS that we put into the ground, and needs to make sure that we recover that cost at some point. And I think agencies right now are happy enough to just hold on to whatever work they can, and they're terrified to have these conversations.
How often do clients assume that they can, because it isn't about the agency special source or whatever, it's about technology? How often do they say, well, we can deploy this technology ourselves? Because if you go to them and try and price the technology, is there a danger that they're going to say that? And are they saying that?
Yeah, I think that
you gave the example of ChatGPT, but obviously it's a bit broader than that.
Yeah, it's not just about chat. It's not just about VO3 and how our call costs, for sure call costs, or any of those things. Like, it becomes, and this is why I think like the conversation has to be leveled up. I work at the operating instance level. Like, if we piece out each piece of what this costs, it becomes, well, I use that, but I don't use that. So don't give me that data cost, right? I want this bits of data, but not this and not that. It's like, no, this overall ecosystem is what we have. And that's what we have to buy into. When you buy into Stripe, Stripe sits at the center. And if you want if you want point of sale, it can do point of sale for you. But what we have is that for what I would assume, that this is Omni, this is Omnicom. When you sit at the center here, when you need to buy into things, I can pull all those bits in. That's a harder, I think. Do clients push back? Yes, immediately. They all say they do not want to pay for these bits. What do you see, Tracy? I'm feeling the same. Yeah.
I see that what clients are coming to agencies to is their specialty or their knowledge. And they were doing that in the past, and they're going to do that in the future. I think there's always going to be clients who think that they're able to do it better, to bring it in-house, to do it cheaper. And that comes in and out of favor. I mean, we've seen that happen. Derek, you will have seen that in your time at agencies, that, at one time a CMO comes in and they internalize a whole kind of piece, and they'll have a studio internally, and then they go out of favor and it comes out again. So I think that's cyclic. But I think what I don't think will change is that, marketing businesses, they look to agencies to the knowledge that they have and the skill set that they have. And I think agencies just need to be great at ensuring that they are going to have the talent that is continuing to do that. So the model does need to move in representing the changes that are happening internally of how the business is going to be operating. So that pricing change is just, we're starting to think about things differently. So let's start to talk about things differently. Let's start to do things differently, and then to bring that through the whole business. Agencies are always going to be, I think, in favor. Just some are going to be more successful at it than others.
I can help you sell your product better. You will come into this mousetrap, right? Like, that's it. If there is a true differentiator. And if ChatGPT can do it better or the same as everybody else and it's free, then everyone should use chat. But there's a reason we don't, right? Like, there's a reason that doesn't happen.
Yeah. I mean, there's been a lot of scaremongering, hasn't there, about what's going to happen with, I think Sam Altman said that, 90% of agencies are going to disappear or something crazy. What did he say that 6 months or 7 months ago? I don't believe that's going to happen. I think these businesses, agency businesses, are, enormously clever and smart, and the way that they service other businesses, they're constantly thinking. But
I think you'll see even more agencies, right? Even though there's the consolidation of the big holdcos, this going to be this talent that comes out, and they're going to start agencies because they have relationships, and they're not saddled or burdened with a lot of the legacy contracts and things, and they can be more nimble. So, I do think that there's disruption to the world. Like, it happened with digital, it happened with mobile, it happened with all these things. And, holdcos just wait, see who wins, and then buys them. So, like, I think that's probably going to, it's withstood the test of time thus far. We'll see if this happens again.
I think it's just going to be faster, Derek. And I think the other thing that's going to happen is that people who rest on their laurels, I mean, we saw it, you're right, with the transverses of digital, and before that, direct mail. And there will be some instances where time and material is a way that is still going to be a way forward in a kind of a strategy. But I cannot see that happening in successful businesses because of the speed and the way that the hours are going to be reduced. How are you going to make your margins? It's just not going to happen. So as a business, you need to be ready for that, and you need to be moving forward.
Yeah, I see T&M as that like additional like little bucket that sits on the bottom, right? Like, because I think there's going to be if we just, even if we play this out, right? Like we go like, okay, there's a tech fee that we resource, right?
Pyramid, we need to turn it upside down, don't we?
Exactly. Yeah, no, but it's right. You're gonna go like foundationally, we're built on this tool. No matter what, you have to buy into the tool, and that includes our data, that includes this, yada yada yada, call costs, all these things. On top of that, you have the outputs and things that you're buying, right? Like, what is that going to be? We can plan on this cycle. We can manage your budget this way. And then on all of those special projects and things, I think there is, I think there will be some speed that they need, or outsourcing their marketing departments and things like that they need help with. That I think will continue to be T&M. So doesn't have to be all or nothing.
And in terms of, there's obviously a big shift, both in terms of the use of technology and also the way that you sell the product. That seems to me that you probably need to transform some of the talent that's within the agencies, because you're moving to more, use of tools, and also in the way that you sell that. Has that happened, or is it about retraining existing people, or are you hiring from tech consultancies, or what's going on there?
I'd love to hear Derek's input on this.
All right. I think while the speed of the products and things coming to market is huge, the speed of the change between the clients and the teams isn't as great. I think agencies still have a little more time on their hands to transition those teams and train those teams. So as these tools come out, remember, like, if we can't just use ChatGPT, right? That would, break all of our, MSAs. So what we have to do is, we're slowly bringing these tools in. We have training, we have tools. If we pivot too quickly, the clients aren't going to be ready for what's there. And what we have is the ability to train the teams that are there. Are we hiring I think we hire from everywhere and always have. So there is a breadth of people from all over at every agency I've ever been at. But I think it's more of the training and understanding how we use the tools here. And I do think you're going to start to see there is a Publicis way of doing it. There's an Omnicom way of doing it. There's a WPP way of doing it as these tools become stickier.
We've talked about the big holding groups. We haven't talked about Accenture. I don't know an awful lot about how they do things, but coming from a slightly different background and maybe not limited from being around for so long and worried about losing big accounts, do you know if they do things differently at all?
They're a lot more process driven, and they have processes and procedures that will far outweigh anything an agency would ever contemplate doing, a traditional agency. So they already come with a rigor of driven process. They're not tied to hours like an agency is, because they've already come through consulting, and the way that they would package their consulting products is more along the lines of they're selling something that is around results, outcomes, value.
I was going to say, because what agencies have always done well, and why it's harder for, I think, people who are used to working with an agency to work with an Accenture, has always been the nimbleness and the AOR mentality of what was there. So as that starts to go away, is that a bigger boom for an Accenture and some of these groups without having that process, like really processed approach? Because I've been at very few agencies that have a really codified approach of, when a client comes in, this is what happens, because like I said before, like, we're in service of that client. Yep. Right? It's the opposite. Like, they're coming to us for a thing, but mostly, I think in a lot of ways, outsourcing that function to us.
And the other thing about the management consultancies is that they often had a seat at the board table, whereas agencies often didn't. They'd be sitting below a CMO. It's kind of a very different. It's a B.
Yeah. It's probably across that senior level. It's not just CMO, it's CTO, CEO, CFO.
100%. They've been better at that, and I think they're better at talking around solutions, outcomes, results, and I think that's probably been their success. So if anybody's listening, let's change the language, and then you're matching what the consultancies would be doing. Once again, they were getting higher billing rates. If you're talking about a 3 times multiple, they're at a 5 times multiple. So does the change in narrative make that much difference? That's a case in point, isn't it?
Yeah. Right. Definitely be more efficient that way, right?
Okay. Well, look, thanks very much both Tracy and Derek, and hope to speak to you again soon.